hello. Welcome to the seventh episode of the Cut to Scene podcast. I'm Aditya, as always, and this is.
I am Devansh.
Okay, and we are here today to discuss Kumbalangi Nights. This is the first time that we are discussing a regional Indian film, and this is actually part of our plan to, take forward the podcast to discuss more and more stuff that comes in Indian cinema, which people generally conflate with just being Bollywood, and not exploring this variety of cinema in other regional languages that we have in our country. I personally watch. Because Malayalam is my mother tongue, I watch a lot of Malayalam films. I also watch some Tamil films and Marathi films. Marathi because I used to stay in Pune for a big part of my life, and I think regional cinema has a lot more to offer supplementarily and complementarily to the Hindi film industry or the so-called Bollywood, with a range of stories, more rooted stories, more talented filmmakers as well. You can see recently that a lot of people have been imported from the southern industries, or it's been happening over a long time, but especially cinematographers. Rajiv Ravi, who's a fixed cinematographer for people like Anurag Kashyap, he shot Gangs of Wasapur, for example. He comes from Kerala. A lot of these artisans, and of course, we've had Santhosh Shivans earlier, who used to shoot films in Hindi and Tamil, but there has been a lot of import, but people who primarily watch Hindi films do not really watch other films. And Amazon Prime Video and Netflix are doing a great job at improving that, because they're improving the subtitling, improving the quality, improving the amount of content that they put up in regional languages on their site. So I would urge everybody who's listening to this podcast to actually go and make an effort to explore regional cinema in all its beauty. As Bong Joon-ho said in one of his speeches when he won the award for Parasite, once you get over that 2-inch line of subtitles, a whole new world of possibilities and cinema opens up for you. So I think we should all take Bong Joon-ho's advice very seriously and try to explore as much as we can in films. Devansh, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I think it opens up a whole new perspective. Once you can avoid the 2 inch gap, or once you can get over it, um, it's a whole new way of seeing the world, right? If you go and watch Parasite, if you watch Super Deluxe, if you watch Cold War, if you watch Roma, all of these are movies which are not in the languages that we are accustomed to. But then watching them tells you a lot about the culture that is followed in these places, and it is in its own, like, a way of traveling. So that is why I find this very, very beautiful. There is one problem though that I felt like was pretty, for me it was pretty enunciated in this movie, which was that uh, the subtitling I felt was subpar, because I could see the characters delivering their dialogues, and I could see that that dialogue in Malayali would probably have meant something funny, or would
Malayalam.
have carried a Malayalam, sorry, would have carried a different flavor to it altogether. But that we couldn't catch that in English. So it's like saying that we are, as you had said in our conversation yesterday, that probably it's like subtitling Wasepur. You can never capture that flavor exactly. So I think that is what was missing for me, and that slightly impeded the experience of the movie. But otherwise, it was a lot of fun. And like, I have not watched a lot of South Indian films. Two that come to my mind are Kumbalangi and Super Deluxe, and both have been like extreme, have been like have been very masala, so to say. Like in Kumbalangi, certain scenes are masala, not the entire movie. But then Super Deluxe in itself is a very spicy movie, so to say. But at the same time, they are very good pieces of filmmaking also. So yeah, I would recommend everyone to start watching movies of different languages, and start exploring just the entire world that there is.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, some wise person had said that the story is universal and it does knows no language. So if the story is universal, we should try to look for story in as many as languages as possible, because that itself is would be universal and something that everybody can relate to. Okay, so let's with that short tirade, so to say, let's go to the movie of the day, Kumbalangi Nights. And as always, I'll start with a short summary of the movie and then we can take the discussion forward. So, Kumbalangi Nights is basically a story set in Kumbalangi, which is a fishing village on the outskirts of Kochi, if people know the city in Kerala. And it tells the story primarily of these four brothers, Sajib, Bonnie, Bobby, and Frankie. These are not brothers, not in all cases, their relation is not a blood relation, but they have relations, they're stepbrothers of each other. And they at least three of them live together in the small dilapidated house in Kumbalangi. The house is basically has no paint on it, has no outer coating on it. It's just a half-built house, so to say. And Bobby, who's one of the brothers, starts dating this girl called Baby, and Baby's sister has married Shami. Shami is the character played by Fahad Fasil, who's one of the best actors in the country right now, I think. And Shami has a lot of. Shami is a classic uh, misogynist, toxic male, and
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 a control
he
freak.
and a control freak, of course, of course. And Shami just rejects so Shami just rejects Bobby and Baby's relationship, and basically one thread in the movie just goes on about how this thread is resolved, how Bobby and Baby sort of get together in the end, and in that process, a lot of conflicts between the brothers themselves are resolved, and we see that the um, house gets happier and happier as the movie progresses, and of course a lot of conflicts are resolved. So that's basically the broad summary of the film. Of course, I've not touched on the ending scenes, which we will probably talk about in more detail as the conversation progresses. So Devansh, what were your first thoughts about the film after you watched it?
So um, I mean, in my recent memory, the last visuals, I've never been to Kerala, and the last visuals I had of Kerala were from Karwa, and they were mind blowing. I was stunned at the beauty of the state, and then I came upon on Kumbalangi Nights, and that was another experience altogether because um if you can, and that is one reason why I have a grudge against photography and filmmaking, in the sense that they show me a world that looks so bloody beautiful, and when I actually land up in the place, it was inadvertently end up disappointing me. So but but yeah, so they have shown Kerala in a very, very beautiful manner. This movie was a lesson to me in a couple of things. One was, how do you take the traditional four brothers and like they're getting together sort of a story, and give it another treatment. Second, how does music dictate the impact of your scene? Because this movie has a lot of such scenes where if you either mute or you change the background score, the entire mood of the scene changes, and your entire takeaway from the movie would also change. So I think that is very, very interesting. But yeah, and another thing was that I started noticing this was that as we were speaking to Satyanshu sir in the last episode, and he told us about his observations on Kumbalangi Nights. He told us that there is this way where he studies, wherein he would divide the film into 10 parts, and then after every 10th he would stop and look at what all do we know right now and what do we think is gonna happen. And I roughly tried that exercise, and it showed me how much content is being how much information is actually being shown to you within a very, very short span of time, and how effective that is. And so every scene serves a purpose, and trying to decode that. So from a technical perspective also, it added a lot of value to me personally.
Mhm. Right, right. Those are very interesting observations and opinions. I think for me, what it did is, when I watched it for the first time, I was blown away by the amount of structure in the film. How the narrative plot structure. Of course, it's a linear storyline, so that's settled. But even within a linear storyline, the amount of structure you can bring in every scene um, by dialogue, by also the shots, complementing it with the camera work. So that was one very interesting observation that I took away. Second is, I really loved that it was set in a fishing village, meaning where they could use this environment of the lake, or the Kayal as we call it in Kerala, Kayals lagoons, yeah. So the Kayal as we call it in Kerala. The fact that, there are still, I mean, we living in cities, we never imagined there to be, water transport to be one major form of transport in anywhere, but it is still a reality in some parts of Kerala, because that is generally, I mean, so I know that one of my grandparents houses in Kerala didn't even have a road connecting it. We had to, get down at some place and then walk through it from the farms. And so this idea of constructing roads to every house is not very, at least wasn't very common in Kerala till about 10-15 years ago. It's only recently that has happened. So in fact, Saji's character, Saubin Shahir's character, remarks once in the film that, there is a road leading to our place. And there's also, we have a European style closet and things like that. So yeah, so that's a very interesting observation. I thought the fact that it's set in that environment also, as you said, also it contributed a lot to the film. And then, of course, the performances are uniformly good across the board. And so it generally happens that in most films that you see, especially with ensemble casts, there is one performance which is, thoda dheela. But in this film, I didn't feel that as well. So these are the three takeaways that I had from the film, mostly. Okay, so Devansh, would you like to start, or should I start?
Sure. Let's start with the first scene where we open into a football ground, and we have Frankie, the youngest of them, playing football there with his friends, and so a lot is told within that sequence, and in the next within the next 5 minutes, because I remember noting down that uh, that moment when Frankie comes home, right? He is shown standing opposite his house across the lake, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at it with a bit of contempt, and and within 1 minute, we know the entire story. Like, we know
Exactly.
what is gonna happen. We know that this guy is sentimental about his family. He doesn't have one, to be precise. uh, there is a lot going on in his head. He sees that house as as an undesirable thing. He in fact lies to his friends when they ask if they can go to his village. So, and then he goes in, and then he's the person who has to clean everything. He makes the whole house neat and clean. He tidies them up. He sees this eggshell which has a cigarette stuffed in it, which is a brilliant scene of how it just goes to tell you this story that these brothers currently live in a house which is like a boys' hostel. This comes back to you when Shammi tells Saji that you can't really give your girl to a like lodge-like place, right? So
Hmm.
basically, it's just like a camp for guys, right?
Yeah.
So that what I found very interesting was one common theme was that a lot of shots in the movie have been taken when characters are sleeping or going to sleep,
Hmm.
and the shots have been just direct shots at their faces from above, right? They do something very very interesting. So in the first instance that we see this when Frankie is sleeping, and we can hear his friends talk about how their families are gonna pick them up and how everything is gonna happen. All of that is ambient noise for us, and we are just focusing on Frankie. And in that moment, we know that okay, he does not relate to all this. He feels lonely because he's alone in the frame, and we are looking at him top down. We see this next when he's lying on the hammock outside, and
Outside.
he's staring at the stars, waiting for Bonnie to come. Again,
Hmm.
another the same feeling because his brothers are fighting outside, inside the house. So this shot is iterated. The only time where this is broken, I feel, in a way, is when a woman is in the frame. So if we skip later into the movie, when the widow moves into the house, Sati, when she moves into the house, there is a shot of her and a baby sleeping. She's singing a lullaby to her. She's humming a lullaby. The camera takes a slanted shot, so things are easier now. We understand it better. Things are smoother. Things are not as blunt as a top-down direct shot where a character is placed alone. That really puts you in the headspace of the character, I feel. So also one thing that I found very very interesting was how the establishing shots of the characters um, are. So for example, if you look at Bobby's establishing shot, Bobby enters, we do not see his face. He enters with a speaker in his hand, keeps the speaker on the table, and there's like a 30-second just scene of him serving dinner to himself, and that is just acting with his hands. And even that is saying so much. His priority number one, like he's going to serve dinner, and he's first of all serving a beautiful dinner that Frankie has cooked for them very recklessly because he's taken it for granted, I think. And he stops when he sees the alcohol, and that's numero uno for him, right? And then Saji comes in, and Saji is this person who, and you are wondering that wait, it is night, and why is Saji yawning right now? He moves out of the room and takes a big long angadai. And then like, wait, what is this guy up to? And then he's very possessive about his drink, but senti about his family. So a lot is going on, but that tells you a lot about the family's dynamics really quickly. Um, then when this fight happens, right? When Bobby comments that all of this is just show, is just farce. So when the fight happens, again, going back to my point about background score, you'd think that this fight is serious because he has said a pretty serious thing to someone who's pretty older to him. But then a guitar strum in the background tells you that okay, this is every day, like this is a routine thing, and there's nothing to take seriously here. So yeah, those were a couple of things that I had noticed. What do you think?
Yeah, like so the guitar thing is a very Western sort of Western
Right,
classical
right.
sort of
Mhm.
tune that plays. Yeah, that's a very interesting observation though. Yeah, and I also agree with your observation that this acting with the hands, and it's a very interesting choice, I guess, because he does not. I mean, one as I mentioned earlier, one thing that I like a lot about this film is how much it says through dialogues without really saying it directly, right? Now take for instance the 10 to 15 minute opening sequence, right? Where after the till after the fight is over, we have, like, of course they have not told each other ki I hate you, you hate me, etc. But in the dialogues we know so much. We know there's a conflict about a father to come, which is going to come up. There is we know that this fact that there is this big conflict in the between the brothers, is going to play a big part in the movie. We know that Bonnie, who is almost at the house and turns back and goes away, will also play a big part, and his conflict also would need to be resolved. We also come to know that Shane Nigam's character, what's his name?
Bobby.
Bobby, yeah, Bobby is Ganjedi, right? Because that's also told through the dialogue. So all this is not said ki "Arey tu to Ganjedi hai." They say it in a very indirect way, which like "Arey you go and sit there and just smoke ganja all the time." That's the dialogue, right? So I thought it was a brilliant way of exposition through dialogue, and not just it's not very plain dialogue. It's very snappy, very rooted dialogue, and that's what I like a lot. Of course, from the camera, you have it's a whole not single shot, but there are very very few cuts in that whole sequence, and of course that builds a lot of tension. Of course, that's also handheld, so that also builds a lot of tension because there is a scope for movement of the camera very easily. And I also like the like how the first 15 minutes is a proper story in itself. It's like it starts, as you said, it starts with the shot on his face, and it also ends with the shot on his face, right? And so it's a story in itself, and
Uh-huh.
that's why I like. And this immediately reminded me of Quentin Tarantino's films. And I know it's a very weird comparison to make, but Quentin Tarantino often makes these episodic films, right? So
Ah.
if look at Inglourious Basterds, right? The
Hmm.
opening scene is a story in itself, 20 minutes, right? The next scene with Brad Pitt talking to the soldiers, the American soldiers, is another scene.
Hmm.
So I like I really appreciated that this was also in a sense structured in a very episodic way. 10-15 minutes ke episodes going on and building the story. So yeah, that's one. So that's what I took away from the whole film. Of course, this I'm saying in retrospect rather than just watching the first 15 minutes. But yeah, that's one thing. Yeah.
Also, another instance was when Frankie, like when the brothers are fighting and when to stop them, Frankie counts 1, 2, 3, and at three they just like they scatter away like creatures, which tells a lot. Which says that these are not mature men right now. They are still boyish. Like they can be controlled by stuff like this. I mean, this is something that we used to do bachpan mein when we were so influenced by wrestling, and we would just count 3, 2, 1, and we'd decide winners and stuff like that, right? So I think that was very interesting. That I mean, even that says a lot, is what I'm saying. So it gives. And one more thing was, when so while they are fighting, Frankie walks out of the house, right? And Frankie um, is seen looking at the boat which is rowing away currently. And as we see in the movie, everyone who in the house is trying to row away from the house's conflicts, because Frankie does the exact same thing the next morning. So the boat is seen rowing away. Now, having seen as many Bollywood films as I have, I expected that there would be a cut and we would see Bonnie and Frankie having an eye contact.
Eye contact.
But
Yeah.
we don't.
We
But
don't.
we don't. What we see is Frankie looking at the boat. The boat is blurred in the background because right now we are in Frankie's headspace. So we can just see that boat going away. Establishing that shot would have reduced Frankie's loneliness, right? So that is why
Yeah.
probably Frankie is left alone to deal with this, to deal with two fighting brothers, and Bonnie has just gone away, abandoning him like he has
Mhm.
been his entire life.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing which was very jarring in the initial sequences was that Frankie has this dream of him drowning, and his mother standing on the uh, like standing on the shore of the house. This is a very like blink and a miss thing. When Frankie sleeps in the first scene itself in his hostel, he has this vision. He has this dream sorts, where he's in the lagoon and he's drowning and he's shouting out for help, and his mother is filling a water vessel and she's going inside the house.
What? I didn't see
Yeah.
this. I didn't
Yeah,
see
it is
this.
there. But
Okay.
so that I found jarring because there is no explanation to that later in the film. It could be a metaphor that okay, Frankie has always been abandoned and left to drown whenever he is needed, his parents or whatever. But yeah, I found that pretty jarring.
Right. Okay. I don't remember the scene at all for some reason. Anyway, so yeah, and so that concludes the first, the exposition of the main characters, the protagonists in the story, and then we have this interlude where you have this titles roll in, and then you have the introduction of the main antagonist. And okay, another structural point about the screenplay is that you start off with these four brothers, and then there is this thread which takes you literally to the other thread, other big exposition. So, for example, we see that this Frankie's friends are sitting and playing, and they're scared to play football because there's this macho man in the house beside who will just the क्या बोलते हैं the pagal uncle who will just come and shout if and take away the football if they start playing. And that is the connecting story to the next thread, which is of the antagonist, which is Shami. So, do you want to say something about Shami first before I go into it?
Yeah, definitely. So, so,
Yeah.
so Shami's introduction is done with this very nice J cut, where we
Hmm.
have the audio of him trying to flatten his tummy, I mean, I think it's not the intro. It's the ending. Like it's the transition of that shot.
Exactly.
So he's trying to flatten his tummy, and we hear a air pump going on, and that is brilliant.
Uh,
It reminded me of Edgar Wright.
yeah, yeah.
So
You want to explain what a J cut is?
So a J cut is when the audio leads the video. So when you can hear the next scene before you can actually see it. So it's done in a lot of movies. You'll hear a vehicle pass by, and then you'll actually see the vehicle pass by in the next scene. So that is a very good J cut that they have there. And also obviously the entire character of Fahad Fasil, and his way of, like, again, the use of a mirror to show the entire, and the nuance that there is a bindi on the mirror, which is a common thing, but to the use of that to tell a story of him removing it with a blade because he does not want the so Bharadwaj Rangan puts this very well, that he does not want anything feminine to be in the presence of his masculine
Feminine.
image.
Right, right. Yeah, I thought that was a brilliant scene as well, because it again, like, how much time does it take to establish this character? Probably 20 seconds. But in 20 seconds, you know what the character is. You know his main trait, which is going to persist all through the film. And again, this is exposition through image, right? Through a moving image, and I think that is where the beauty of cinema comes in. That you can say so much by just 20
Show
seconds
don't
of
tell.
a shot, right? Yeah, exactly. Show don't tell. And but there is actually a tele dialogue at the end of his exposition which says Raymond the complete man.
Remember the com-
So it's not completely show don't tell. There's also the a tell aspect to it also.
But
And
another interesting thing is how much you can tell about a character without showing that character at all. So if you look at the scene that I think precedes this, I'm not sure, where Shaiju, who's his partner in the salon, comes with his bike. His brother comes with his bike and the plate, and so you're told a couple of things. You're told that this guy's bike was there, and he needs and it's a Royal Enfield Bullet, which is very very typical and very associated to that masculinity, macho man. The second thing is that he has this habit of having food in a particular plate, um, and then there is this negotiation, not a negotiation but a persuasion scene, where they are convincing Shaiju to take a lift from baby, and Shaiju keeps saying no. Um, and uh, and that is probably, and you feel that is probably because he is scared of someone. And who could that someone be? Of course that could only be Shami. So
yeah,
yeah,
this is
sorry,
the
you were
one.
saying
This is
something.
the scene succeeding
Succeeding
the
it
scene.
probably, yeah, yeah.
The one before that is when people are talking about him. Ki, Arey, there's this guy
Ha,
who's
ha,
ekdam,
yeah.
dangerous and things like that. So yeah, so that's yeah. And again, like, we have that character establishment there. Oh, one very cringy thing which a lot of Mallus do. Like, for example, Shami calls his wife Mole, right? Mole literally translates to Hindi as bete, beti.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's a very patronizing word to
Ah.
use,
Mhm.
right? And so that's what I mean, and there are people who call their wives Mole,
Hmm.
and in fact, it's also another weird thing that wives call husbands Cheta, and Cheta means
Which is elder brother, right?
bhaiya. Yeah, elder brother. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so that's also a weird thing in Mallu culture. But yeah, so yeah, and so from the start that there is this whole tone of patronizing which is going to be there in the whole film, which also comes later when Shami is talking to the foreigner. Shami is talking to baby herself when she wants to get married to Bobby, and a lot of other places, right? So that's also, I think, a good instrument of character development without actually saying a lot. Just basically exposition. And yeah, and then of course, so these are just this is just one example of how the story just takes there's a thread joining the first scene and the second scene. Of course, after this, there's a scene with where Saji meets Bobby meets maybe for the first time, and their track starts.
But before that, I want to jump to a theme and ask you something. So, like the broader theme of masculinity and the way both the families are shown, how does it tie back to the matriarchal culture that Kerala had? Because I think that's pretty unique given India's context that Kerala had a matriarchal culture. Could you comment on that? How does it tie back? Is it contrary? How does it work out? Yeah.
So in a contemporary context, I think it's a fair portrayal. I think a lot of people also have this misconception that Kerala was matriarchal. Kerala was never really matriarchal, but it was matrilineal, and there's a difference between them. So basically, matrilineal in the sense the inheritance is passed on from the to the mother's side instead of the father's side. So for a long time, people used to inherit wealth of their mamas, right? So I would inherit my mama's wealth or not my father's wealth. So it was like that. So it was all a matrilineal society, but of course it's all changed now, and now it's as orthodox, as toxic masculine it can get. So yeah, it's a very real portrayal, I would say. It's not a wrong portrayal, and yeah, I mean, of course, when we think of Kerala, at least in the north or north of let's say the southern states, we often want to think of it as some progressive, because there's a high rate of literacy, there's a high rate of political awareness. We want to think of it as also an unorthodox state, but that is not true. It's still very, very orthodox while also being politically aware, while also being literate and things like that. So you can't compare the orthodoxy, you can't correlate the orthodoxy or unorthodoxy to these parameters. Yeah, anyway, yeah, I think that was what I want to say.
Yeah. And then we were talking about the Lagoon Chill soundtrack and how it kicks in with Bobby.
Yeah, so what I was again, like, there is this smooth transition from this Shammi track to the next track which is going to come, which is these two friends sitting and talking, and Bobby's friend's girlfriend coming, and then that's how he meets Baby. So that's again basically illustrates my point of how there's a thread joining each and every scene, and how each scene is in itself a short story. Where now we are also seeing that there is this whole there is a whole literal scene, literal as in a visually literal scene, where Saji and Bobby and Baby fall in love. Right, there's this. He casts a net on her, and then it's like they are in that net, which I thought was a nice metaphor to use. That metaphor also, of course, comes back in the end of the film, where the person who's trapped in the net is Shami. But that was, of course, not very convincing to me. But then we can get to it later. So that is. So yeah, I mean, this whole first act, so to say, it's a very long first act. I thought. It's around 45 to 50 minutes, the whole first act, so to say, where the conflict and the inciting incident has happened. The inciting incident being Saji and Bobby and Baby deciding to get married. So the whole first act is over, and it's a long first act, and we have seen that it's going to be an episodic film. It's going to have this whole thread of characters joining, and then comes the second act, right, where. And again, the second act is also very, very, very nicely structured. There's escalation after escalation, until it just breaks all apart, all hell breaks loose, and then you come down, and then there's the third act, right?
So one thing that Bobby's story really clearly established, with the use of his friend as well as his friend's girlfriend, and the way that interaction between them is shot, because we see Bobby right in the middle, of both of them, right? And it very well establishes that Bobby has been lacking companionship in his life, and he's looking for someone. Like, he's been alone, and they were having a talk like that, right? Because Bobby is like, how could you settle for this guy? I mean, he was just like, he was making fun of his friend's looks also, but we could also
Yeah,
sense like a
yeah,
sense of envy in him. So yeah, that I felt that was a very effective scene at that. I also noticed that whenever you are around Shammi's house in the film, you have very rapid cuts. This was specific to the scene where the ball goes inside and stuff, but then even generally, and I think that is instrumental in setting a sense of panic in the viewer's mind, right? Because you know that okay, there is this house is jari, there is a lot going on, because otherwise all the camera transitions and everything that you see, for example, even in Bobby's introductory scene, the camera transitions are very smooth.
very
They
pans.
like,
Yeah,
right,
the very
they let
smooth
you enjoy
pans,
the
for
scenery and
example.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and that also goes a long way in establishing a tone for these. There's a tonal shift in between these two houses, so to say, and which again, of course, goes in with the tonal shift or the tonal differences in the film, in the script as it treats their characters themselves. Yeah, and what do you feel about this whole sequence where the end of the first act is basically this song, right? Which is played when these people go when Bobby and Baby are a thing now, and now they start going out together, and when the
Yeah.
whole slap. Did you? So by the way, I don't know if you noticed this. When they're watching a movie, when actually Bobby makes advances towards Baby, did you notice which film was playing on screen?
I think so. I've forgotten, but I won't be able to
It
answer
was
now. Yeah.
it was Arjun Reddy, which is basically Kabir Singh
Oh, of
Telugu
course.
version.
Oh God.
Yeah, this is the first thing
Oh,
this I noticed on my first watch, and it was like, oh shit, okay. Yeah, it was Arjun Reddy which is playing, and we all know what kind of debates and discussions that movie has been embroiled in. Anyway, so yeah, and so I think this it was so I mean, one thing I thought was, in general, first acts do not end so late, especially in a film which is around two, not a very long film by Indian standards. It, I thought the first act ended quite late. It ended at the 50th minute. Did you find that to be a problem?
not for me because it's an ensemble film, so there are too many characters to establish. Also, I mean, despite the fact that you have told so much story in the first few scenes, you have to establish certain things about a character. For example, um, so we have seen Frankie, Bobby, and Saji together. We have not seen Bonnie with them. We see Bonnie, Saji, and Bobby in the bar scene together for the first time, and then we understand what their dynamic is and the sort of power or the sort of influence that Bonnie has and his whole gang, right? Then also they also go one step further to sort of establish how exactly how toxic Shammi can get with that uncle scene, which I find very interesting.
Oh
And
my God, yeah.
that's a scene where I would want some information from you. So
Hmm.
is the uncle also a ghar jamai?
Yes. So in that sense, basically, he is the person who stays at home, and his wife is working. That is the
Okay,
context of
okay,
that scene, right? So, and again, these things are taken very, as I told you, Kerala is a very orthodox society in that sense, and males sitting at home is taken in a very bad light, and a lot of things are thrown around at them. Yeah, it's like, for example, like, I mean, even in my family, it's very common to say, ki, don't act like a girl, right? And so it's a very there are these notions of maleness and femaleness which are very, very pronounced. So yeah, yeah.
okay, interesting. And also, this is one part where I felt that the subtitles did not do their magic because they have this conversation where he tells him that he's not they are not birds of the same feather, and as in Shammi and the uncle are not birds of the same feather, and he has a proper job unlike him and all of that. And then his wife, Shammi's wife, tries to digress the conversation in a gentle way, and she says the vindaloo is undercooked. Is that what she says? What is the exact what is the essence of it?
Basically, yeah, that's literally what she says. Like what she's trying to break away from the conversation by actually, it's like a punchline to end the whole thing. Like there's a lot of this context being set up by by Shammi's character, and like what the wife is doing is she's just she's trying to break the tension by actually putting some sort of punchline and ending it right there. Whereas, and
Okay.
that punchline actually has the opposite effect because it's worse than what Saji actually said.
Yeah, it's offensive, right? That you do only one thing, you cook, and even that is not proper.
Right. So it's that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, I thought
Okay.
it was. I mean, like the subtitles were in one-to-one correspondence. That's literally what she says.
Acha, okay. All right. So, coming to the theater scene, um, I love the way they shot that scene, because every time Bobby attempts a kiss, we take a closer shot, and every time she evades him, we go to a slanting sort of a shot which is further away from them, and then again we return closer, so it fools the viewer also into the same thing that Bobby is being fooled into. Bobby keeps thinking that if I give one more try, maybe she'll agree, and and the user also feels that okay, one more time we are this is another time that we are in a close up, so probably she's gonna agree this time, but then again we are sent back to the same thing, and that is a good play, like with the camera, to show this the progression of this.
Yeah, and it's a nice breaking of stereotypes as well, right? Matlab, I mean, all your Shah Rukh Khan type, matlab, Shah Rukh Khan brand films have always been ki पूछो एक point में मानी लेगी. And it's a nice break of stereotype as well. I really like that scene a lot, in fact. And of course, and it makes sense that Arjun Reddy is playing on screen. It completely makes sense.
What about the resolution of the fight?
Uh, yeah, I mean, like she says like marry me and you do whatever you want to do, and she's like, yeah, I mean, he's making a decision for himself for the first time in his life, right? Like he's saying that,
Mhm.
oh yes, I will commit to this. He's not committed to his job, he's not committed to his brothers, he's making a decision of
Yeah,
committing. So the character, so it's classic case of the hero changing through the process of a story, right? So the hero has changed now. I
right, and
mean,
he has to,
he's learned his
and
lesson, he's
because we
changed.
have a scene, and we have a scene in the bar where he's having this conversation with his friend that he does not why does he want to marry her and everything, but now is the time when he has to understand, and his character has to change to understand that. And then we come to the scene where baby is telling her sister about this in the kitchen, and enters Shami. Oh god, that's a scary scene. What do you think about that?
Oh yeah, it reminded me somehow again, like these things reminded me of if you watch No Country for Old Men, it's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
how Javier Bardem's character is in there. Like with like a slight smile, like a wide-eyed slight smile character, and you know that it's a villain. Like it's but you almost want to laugh there, which is it's
Right.
like a very it has a very black comedy effect at that
Right.
point.
And I was actually counting. He asks them what it is for. He asks them 10 times. There are 10 cuts there. And he keeps persuading, and he's behind them like anything. So, yeah. And just with his smile in his eyes.
Yeah, exactly, and that's in some sense starting of the second act, right? That's where we know that this is a conflict, and this is going to this has to be resolved somewhere in the film, and and from then on, I thought the film just sort of changes tracks in the sense it goes into this deeply meditative track of Saji dealing with his own problems and also Bobby parallelly dealing with his own problems, right? And again, like in their, it's almost like for that a certain duration in the film, there is no hope for either of these characters. Like they are doomed to be, just they're doomed to have bad lives, right? Because Saji fights with his brother. Then he goes to drink with his this colleague of his, so the so-called colleague of his, and the colleague some like climbs upon tries to commit suicide or tries to die by suicide, and then he ends up killing the other person, and then again he gets the slap. Oh yeah, you want to discuss that scene, by the way, the scene in the police station.
Just one thing that I forgot, when the Shami scene is happening in the kitchen, that is again one scene where, as I was telling you, that I've started noticing staging more. So if you look at that shot, it's a shot from one side of the kitchen, and we see baby telling her sister about her affair, where baby is away from the camera and we are with her sister, we are closer to her sister. That is because we understand the sister's argument more than we understand baby's argument. The sister is like, who is he, what does he do, and everything. So we understand that, and that is why it's like that. Once Shami comes into the frame, then we see the sister and baby together at the same sort of, they were in the same frame pehle bhi, but we see them at a more at a sort of the same depth, so to say. So basically, point being that now there is an opposing force to both the sisters, and the two sisters have united. So that was interesting. Now coming to the police station scene, and I agree with you that this part, I sort of, I mean, it is the only part where the film sort of descends for me. I mean, because the mood of the film becomes slightly pensive at this part. And I think I would have liked to explore Bonnie and Frankie more, because I have seen we have seen the story of a good for nothing guy trying to get a girl, um, and in recent times we are getting to see more of. I mean, it was a good thing that they tried to show how a man breaks down in the form of Saji's character, and so that was also good. But then I feel that Saji got away with a lot of things very easily in terms of the guy's wife. But yeah, coming back to the police station scene. The police officer is a pretty famous actor, no?
Oh, he's a famous not a very famous act. I mean, more than being a famous actor, he's a very famous director. He's actually the director of these two films, Maheshande Pratikaram and Thondi Mudalam Driksakshim. His name is Dilesh Potan. And so basically, the idea is that, there are a few group of 5 to 8 people, directors, writers, actors, everything they do. Lijo Jos Pelisheri is one of them, Dilesh Potan, Ashik Abu, Syam Puskaran, who's the writer of this film. All these people work together and appear in each other's films. Okay, even the person, the uncle, right? His name is Chemben Vinod Jose, and even he's a writer for a lot of Lijo Jos Pelisheri's films. He's the writer of Angamati Diaries, for example. So these people, it's like a zeitgeist in Malayalam cinema. It's like a new era. It's like a renaissance, where these people are making these crazily artistic films and still managing to sell it to the audience. And people are really sitting up and taking notice at this. So yeah, he's a very famous director, and I would urge people to check out his other films. Basically, it's Thondi Mudalam Driksaksham and Maheshande Pratikaram. At least one of them is there on Netflix, I guess, or Amazon Prime. One of them.
Okay. Yeah, you were talking about the slap scene.
Yeah. So the slap scene is again very unlike. It's again breaking a stereotype, right? Where he gets a slap and he does not react to it. He does not react to it like, he does not start weeping or even whatever, like saying anything. He has no words to say. He just looks at the police officer and he just smiles slightly and he says nothing. And that is when you sense that this person has actually started to break down. The death of his friend, which is caused by his own hands, has actually taken a big toll on him, and it's something that is getting him down into depression. You see the first signs of that, at least in that scene, and that just keeps on going in the other scenes as well. For example, when he goes to his colleague's wife, right, Sati, and the first dialogue that he says is, I am going to your husband. tell me if I should tell him anything from your side. Meaning that he has decided to die by suicide. He's decided to, take his own life. And and you know that, those are all establishing shots, right? That he is going down that drain again and again. um and and yeah, and finally it's only after that he realizes that his whole life is now gone, and he can't even cry properly, is when he says, "Okay, I want to see a psychiatrist." And I thought, I mean, like in my head, it was the classic case of, there is no hope, there is no hope, there's no hope. But then, even if you're in that bad a depression, there is a way out by actually going and seeking help. And this, again, is not often done in a lot of films, right? I mean, the classic Hindi thing would be that in a Hindi film, or in a very, very, normal Hindi film, what would be is that, Saji receives a slap from the police officer, and then he mends his ways. And that would be the conflict escalation, and resolution just happens after it. Or it would be that he goes to Sati and he realizes, oh, there's this, and Sati ne usko maafi de diya, and but that is not the resolution here. The resolution is him literally going out and seeking help, and venting out all his fears, and then getting a resolution, which in fact also coincides with the resolution, as when we see that Bobby has now gotten a new job, and he's also talking about his father. And while in the sequence where he is with the psychiatrist, Saji's character is also talking about the father. And we see that, the conflict that was established way in the first scene itself now comes to fruition. That, now we see that, that these two brothers, the biggest conflict in their life is actually their father, and how they weren't good sons to their parents or father because their mom left them, and things like that. And I really like the way it is shot, or the way it is, the story is told to the images, right? You see a cut of Bobby talking to Baby, and then you also see and also you see how Saji's character is talking to the psychiatrist, and you see this character just zooming into on his face slightly and slightly and slightly, and that building of a tension and making you relate to the character. I mean, of course, the use of a close up in the scene is very, very important, because it makes you like really feel what is there. And Sobin Shahir again, like, oh, okay, for the record, I think Sobin Shahir is the best actor in the country right now. I mean, you see his other films as well. His range is
Sooraj Santhosh is
maddening.
Saji, by the way.
And Saji is Sobin Shahir. He's also a director, by the way, again. So yeah, and I really like that stylistic choice. And then you see after that, it's a happy song that plays when he's coming out of the psychiatrist, and Bobby is also leaving that the place where he was Baby, and that is the place where a big conflict of the story has taken a step towards its resolution, right? One of the threads that about their fathers is come towards resolution, right? And then we see that the first woman enters the house, right? The character, what was the character of the foreigner? I forgot. Naila.
She's Naila.
Yeah, the character of Naila enters the house, and there's a big smile
on on Frankie's face.
You were saying, on Frankie's face, which is you were saying, sorry.
And I was talking about the salon scene. I wanted to talk about a bit about that. Yeah, so the salon scene is, I mean, the purpose of the scene is that this is the first time Bobby is actually meeting Shami. This is the first time that um, both the backgrounds of both the characters, Baby and Bobby, are actually meeting and merging and seeing each other, right? And we have to understand the amount of power that Shami has, and the amount of say he has in the family's decisions. And it is an extremely indulgent scene. Yes, it has used a lot of unique elements, crazy close-ups, crazy music, just but then if you look at it, it's been shot like a comedy. because the audience is laughing at it, right? Because they are laughing at the misery of the characters, they are laughing at the helplessness and the portrayal itself, and the strange sequence of events that has led to Bobby literally being at the mercy of Shami right in the first, like right at the first time they meet, because there's a blade on his neck.
Yeah, yeah, it's a brilliant way of yeah, it's a brilliant way of how Shami is gonna treat him later in the film as well, right? He's always gonna have a so-called blade to his neck because he's not gonna let him get married to baby. And yeah, that's also very again, like that's why I like this goes back to my points on episodes, right? Like when you have some time to stretch out an episode and tell the story in the episode in the best way possible, there can be a lot of interesting results, as we have of course seen through Tarantino's recent films and this film as well.
Right, right. For like I felt that there was this observation that for everyone in the house is like a metaphor for their inner self, and what they are trying to do is escape that inner self to go to the outside world. So even when for example we have Bobby, who is hesitating because he has to ask Saji to go with him to for the marriage proposal. Bobby has to face the outer world when the shot has begun. He's standing at the doorway, and the family, excuse me, the house also does not have any door, like which is a pretty like it's a pretty strange thing, but it has no door, and but first, before facing the outside world, he must turn around and convince his inner world about it. So he has to talk to Saji, come to terms, establish that relation again, call him Chetta, and that is how they can go beyond that. We see two shots, one where Saji is sitting close to the window looking outside, traumatized, and he calls Frankie and asks him for help, asks him to take him to a psychiatrist. And the next, when we see Bobby telling Saji that he thinks he will move out of the house. These are two scenes that have been shot through railings. There is a railing of a window, and we are so this is again where, in the first scene, Shaji is projecting his inner self out to the world and is going to look for help, and in the second scene, the is he's Bobby is looking inward and saying something that has been trapped in his heart for long, where he's trying to say that I think I'll move out of the house. Saji is the man in the kitchen, that is the heart of the house, that is holding it together by surviving. I mean, for survival, that is very, very essential. But Frankie is the one who's making the house a home, because he keeps it clean.
In
He's the
fact,
sort of the yeah.
yeah, in fact, like as even Satyanshu sir was pointing out in the last thing, right? I mean, the house is not a house. It, even literally, it's not a house, right? It's half constructed. There's no proper washroom in the house. There's a washing machine which just goes just it's a very in a creaky shape. But yeah, I mean, this what this house also needs is a female presence, and the female presence actually comes from a very unexpected source, which is what's her name? Bonnie's character, right? Bonnie. Yeah, Bonnie's character, and when he brings Naila home after the whole argument with Shami's character, and that's when we see, there's this, and like this also coincides with when they come out of the psychiatrist's place, and also there's this whole thing of their conflicts, inner conflicts have come out. And then, of course, we just after that we have the scene of Sati coming home, which again is shot beautifully, as again Satyanshu sir was mentioning last time. There's Sati is actually sitting in the front, and the shot is actually taken from her perspective and not Saji's perspective, who's almost out of focus in the frame, right? And it's actually there are shots of Sati's face and her baby, and the characters, I mean, all the people inside the house who have come out and to watch it, and this gives us a feeling that it's as again Satyanshu sir was mentioning, that it's her who's going to bring a change in the house by making it a home. right? So yeah, I mean, I think these are all very interesting cinematic choices, storytelling
And the
choices.
imagery is also that of Mother Mary and Jesus, like which has been referred to a lot of times in the movie. There have been instances where
Yeah.
there's a painting of Jesus or a poster of Jesus placed behind. We also have that one scene where Shami moves the chair to the head of the table.
Oh yeah,
There's a very
yeah.
sly, yeah,
Very sly scene of asserting his masculinity on the table, right?
right,
Him feeling happy about it while the others don't seem to care, and they don't even know what has
right.
happened.
And then of course we have that sequence which is like which reminded me of Baby Driver again, when this guy is trying to settle into his job but he leaves eventually.
Right. When yeah, that's that. I I thought it all happened too fast. I don't know.
Yeah,
That was one. It just happened too fast, and I'm sure it's beautifully shot, and there's this whole humdrum of a factory worker that is shown where he's just supposed to put the fish in, shake it, and I mean that's literally what he's told also at the start, right? But I didn't see the conflict building up really.
we
I
didn't see
thought
the
it just
exhaustion
came.
basically.
Yeah, which brings me to my one of my observations of the film is that towards the end it gets a bit the writing gets a bit inconsistent, and it feels like they're running towards the end instead of slowly moving at the pace of the film earlier. Of course, as you said, there could have been more explanations of Bonnie's character and his relationship with Naila, which I thought was underwritten or undershown. One of those things. I think it would be more undershown than underwritten, because I think they would have given him also a much more screen time, at least page time, if not screen time. But I'm still willing to forgive that. But for the end, the way the end is constructed, for the final act is constructed, right? Um, so we know. So of course, there is this whole message of the movie trying to give out about mental problems, mental illnesses, right? And of course, the whole mental illness track of Saji is very well fleshed out and given a lot of weight. But I thought the same for Saji is not. So the same for Shammi is not very well done, because he makes a very weird character choice, where he just goes and hides, so to say, hides his face
Yeah,
in a corner of the
stands
house
in the corner. Yeah,
when somebody speaks back to him, right? When his wife speaks back to him, and I thought that was a bit inconsistent with Shammi's character as was developed until then. I didn't quite get why it was there in the film in that form. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that is the problem. I mean, in the sense that uh, that is what makes his wife feel weird, right? That, and she's weirded out at that, and then uh, so so essentially what they were trying to show, I guess, is that here is a character who has always asserted his masculinity onto others and projected it, and any time when he has actually been questioned, or he has been a strong force has been put against him on that, he has gone into a shell, and he has tried to escape it by doing this, and that is why his brother knows that okay, something of this sort happens and he'll get okay ultimately. um, but then he doesn't get okay, and that feels pretty weird to me. The entire turn of events. uh, Also, one thing that I felt about the movie, and this is not related to the last act but more on the lines of the entire movie, was that somehow I felt that the female characters do not have a lot of layers.
True. Yeah. I think it's a function of. I mean, I don't know. It's a function of the narrative choice. The story is being told from the point of view of the male characters, both as a protagonist and an antagonist. And I think it's a choice that the writer had to make, that to give, to not not give the female characters a lot of exposition. And I think you're right. It would have been better. I mean, I think a baby gets a lot of exposition, right? At least some exposition.
No,
Uh,
in fact, that is the thing. I had a bit of problem with Anna Ben's um, um, acting as well, because I felt that to me at places, I know it's a brilliant. Was it a debut?
yeah, it's W. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a very good debut in that sense, but then I felt that the character was so structured that I only saw one dimension of it. One dimension of it. One was like it being uh, complying to the males in her life, and then trying to stand up to them wherever they go wrong. Um, I don't know. I wish there would have been a bit more attention to that, or I think, I mean, as you said, it's a storytelling choice, but that would have made me feel better about the film. I feel if they had been given more voice.
Yeah, and
But
I
okay,
agree with that observation. I think it's they
Mhm.
used as mere pawns in the film, rather than
Exactly,
they
instruments.
just
Yeah,
use as pawns to get to some conflict and things like that, and not really
hmm,
given a lot of fleshing out, so to say, right?
right, right,
And yeah, and that's a even Nyla's character for that matter. Nyla's character is like the typical foreigner,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
And yeah, but yeah, I think it's a I mean, I got the sense that this would have probably been a Gangs of Wasipur like film, which was supposed to be long, but they cut it down. But I don't know. We will never know until we read the script, I guess. Yeah. Coming back to the scene with Fahad Fasil going, and then the whole shootout or the fight sequence happening later, which I thought the fight sequence was very well choreographed. I mean, there's a lot of tension built by. So of course there's of course no guns, but then people are throwing things, and this all happening inside the confines of a small house, not a small house, but a house in the front room. And I thought the tension was really well built, right? I mean, with him throwing, and that there's this one scene which almost felt straight out of a Tarantino film, right? Where he breaks the door and he falls on the door.
Yeah,
Bobby falls on
yeah,
the door,
yeah.
and then there's the
Then
knife which
yeah.
which comes and hits him. I love that scene. It again
It threw me
reminded me
back,
of.
like, yeah, it gave me a multiple throwbacks. One was, yeah, like the typical sort of we've seen this sort of action. It also
Uh-huh.
reminded me of Shining, and even
Yeah.
Bharadwaj
Okay.
Rangan
Sure.
mentions that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
his character, the smile, the creepiness of the smile throws you back to Jack Nicholson, and the way Shining
Mm-hmm.
climaxes, because even that is a sequence
The
where
master of creepy
women are
smiles.
hunted and
Yeah.
they are chased. Uh, so yeah, in that sense, it was pretty well choreographed. You have certain tensions in the sense that, but what I fail to understand is exactly what sort of emotion was that scene trying to achieve. Um, because if it wanted to scare the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, Shaji's expressions, and at some points the background score, and at some points the things that Shami was doing weren't in line with that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you are getting the antagonist to pull out a hammer and literally throw it at the characters, and the characters are not as scared as you would be. I mean, it was not the Gajni treatment of action, right?
Of
So,
course not.
so I mean, yeah. So you're not scaring me. You're telling me that things are gonna be fine, but at the same time, the montage of Bobby finding baby and her sister and mother beneath the bed, and them pulling it out, is a sad thing. Is a thing that is because it is shown domestic violence, like domestic violence at that extent, right? And so that is extremely moving at the same time. So it was jarring in that sense for me. In that sense, I found it pretty jarring, because I did not know what to feel.
I think I agree with what you're saying, but I have theory about why it's written, and I think it ties back into the whole conversation about how the I think it ties back to the scene before that, right? When he's angry at them and he just goes and stands. So there's no proper description of his illness. And what I think, I mean, again, this is just pure speculation, that the last scene was probably written as a product of his mental illness. Like, because he is this so-called, a psychotic killer kind of person, not killer, but like a psychotic person, he would be expected to do such things. But yeah, the point is, and I think why you thought of it as jarring, and I also thought of it as jarring, is that we do not get enough motivation. We don't understand the character's motivation to do it, and that character motivation is probably missing from the film, and it has been cut out or was not even written.
Yeah, if you want me to be, I don't know, if you want me to be sensitive to his mental illness or aware of that, when he's sitting on a drawer and he's telling me that he's saying Shammi is a hero, then I am laughing at him, right? I am laughing at the entire at the comedy of errors and at the situation, because I can see that this is his toxic masculinity that is built inside him, what he feels about himself speaking. This is what it is, right? But at the same time, and in the very next scene, when I see the consequences of his action, I feel guilty for laughing. So I don't exactly, like, I was pretty confused about what went on in that scene.
Yeah, again, yeah, I understand. I understand your confusion, and I think what was wanted to achieve was some kind of ending, like like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Uska jo ending hai. I don't know if you watched that film. Have you?
Yeah.
So I think what they were trying to achieve was the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where that a really bad incident is probably going to happen and was averted, of course, in the movie. But you want to achieve it through a comedic and Quentin Tarantino-ish style, and you want to do it that way. And I think it was. I mean, of course, I guess this movie came out before Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but of course that doesn't matter. But I think the effect intended was that, but the effect did not work because the character of Shami was not given the motivation to do that. And yeah, I think it ties back into the ending, and I think it's a very good point that you brought up.
So yeah, while wrapping up, I would like to give a huge shout out to Sushin Shyam, because I think his work in the background score and the music that he's provided is instrumental in making the film what it is in a lot of ways. Just amazing background score, and it draws you into the scenes and just plays with your emotions so well. Yeah, I don't know if using English songs is common in Mallu films. Is it?
Not really, but again, that's the thing. The recent set of directors have started doing it a lot. In fact, Sushin Shyam he's a hardcore metal. He used to be in this band. I forgot the name. What is it called? The Downtrodens. Yeah, it's an indie metal band. He was the lead of that, I guess. And then he shifted to making movies. Scoring for movies. In fact, his score for the movie Virus, which is about this Nipah virus outbreak in Kerala. It's a real story. Again, it's my favorite, one of my favorite films. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. It's one of my favorite films of the decade. Again, very, very good film. Is also very, very good. His score for that film. And Sushin Shyam is a very, very talented guy. And why I like him is also because he really brings together the sort of music that is there in Kerala, the traditional music, as well as, these metal elements which he was in a band of. Yeah, I think the music, even I don't know if you've heard of this band called Thaikudam Bridge. Even the lead of that band, Govind Menon, who's now called Govinda Vasanta, is also a very big music composer in Tamil and Malayalam. So there are these people who are the Indian music scene is actually feeding into the movies, which is a very good thing to see. The cross fertilization, so to say. Yeah, so I guess that's it for a discussion. Devang, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, so my call to action or my plea to the audience is just to stop viewing South Indian movies in the cliched sense that we do, the sense that Setmax and UTV action makers do. because there is a lot more that it has to offer. So yeah, start exploring. I mean, these platforms are doing a really good job in bringing out the good cinema to us, and yeah, I mean, this is like this is a piece of art that should be cherished. I mean, Kumbalangi Nights as an experience, as a visual experience, the audio of the film, the soundtrack, the acting, all of it deserves the sort of attention that we aim this episode gets it if we get listeners ever. Yeah, go ahead, we.
Yeah, but at least the 5 to 6 listeners that who listen to our podcast regularly, if they go and watch, I would think it's a
Yes.
very big thing in itself. So yeah, I mean, I really like this movie. While I watched it just after it came on Amazon Prime, I think, and I'd heard very good things about the film. I was, of course, not as impressed by this film as I am by other films of the of the Kerala film industry that has come out in the recent years. Some suggestions, again, as I've mentioned through the podcast, is Maheshinte Pratikaram, Tondi Mudalam Sakshiyam, Maya Nadi. Oh, brilliant! One of the best romances I've seen ever. And Virus, which is as I said, my favorite movie of the
Angamali
decade.
Diaries,
It's Angamali Diaries, of course. Angamali Diaries,
Bangalore Days.
Jallikattu, all of Bangalore Days is a masala film, which is again very well
Okay.
done. All these films are brilliant, and I urge people to really check this out. Again, Angamali Diaries is also a very beautiful film, and we probably won't have to do an episode about that as well at some point. But Imayao is another. All this is on Amazon Prime. That's the best part. And I would again, I would echo Devansh's words and request you everybody to even at least watch one of these films. Maybe start with Bangalore Days if that is the easiest film to watch from the south, I guess. And yes, like even with its flaws, it's a very well made film, and I hope we get to see many more films like this from Kerala and in general the rest of the Indian film industry, and we certainly have a long way to go. Okay, so that concludes our discussion on Kumbalangi Nights. Kumbalangi Nights is, as we have mentioned, it's streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Please watch it. Please let us know what you thought about the film. Please let us know something that we might have missed. You can contact cuttoscene on Twitter at cuttoscene, on Instagram at cuttoscene. You can find me, Aditya, on Instagram at Adi Vijay Kumar, on Twitter at also goes by V. You can find Devansh on Devnash on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, that's about it from us. Stay safe, stay well, and happy movie watching. Bye bye.
Bye bye.